We climbed mountains so high it seemed as if we would scrape the moon. But the Polar Express never slowed down. Faster and faster we ran along, rolling over peaks and through valleys like a car on a roller coaster.
Watch out.
The mountains turned into hills, the hills to snow-covered plains. We crossed the barren desert of ice, the great polar ice cap. Lights appeared in the distance. They looked like the lights of a strange ocean liner sailing on a frozen sea. What, buddy?
This Mini Cooper, Volkswagen looks like this car, but and it's yellow, and that looks like it.
Okay.
That's what that looks like.
There, said the conductor. There is the North Pole.
And then, and the train's going down right, and then going down right now. And then it's normally.
Yes, the North Pole. It was a huge city, standing alone at the top of the world, filled with factories where every Christmas toy was made. At first, we saw no elves. They are gathering at the center of the city. The conductor told us that is where Santa will give the first gift of Christmas. Who receives the first gift? We all asked. The conductor answered, he will choose one of you. Look! shouted one of the children.
Look, the piles up there.
Mm-hmm. The elves. Outside we saw hundreds of elves. As our train drew closer to the center of the North Pole,
Daddy, this car is a Jaguar.
We slowed to a crawl. So crowded were the streets with Santa's helpers. When the Polar Express could go no farther, we stopped and the conductor led us outside. We pressed through the crowd to the edge of a large open circle. In front of us stood Santa's sleigh. The reindeer were excited. They pranced and paced, ringing the silver sleigh bells that hung from their harness. It was a magical sound, like nothing I'd ever heard. Across the circle, the elves moved apart, and Santa Claus appeared. The elves cheered wildly. He marched over to us and, pointing to me, said, "Let's have this fellow here." He jumped into his sleigh. The conductor handed me up. I sat on Santa's knee, and he asked, "Now, what would you like for Christmas?" What do you think the boy said?
I'm from his way.
I knew that I could have any gift I could imagine, but the thing I wanted most for Christmas was not inside Santa's giant bag.
Oh, that's what he said.
What I wanted more than anything was what?
I don't know.
Was one silver bell from Santa's sleigh. That's what you said earlier. When I asked, Santa smiled. Then he gave me a hug and told an elf to cut a bell from a reindeer's harness.
No.
The elf tossed it up to Santa. He stood holding the bell high above him and called out, the first gift of Christmas. A clock struck midnight as the elves roared their approval. Santa handed the bell to me, and I put it in my bathrobe pocket. The conductor helped me down from the sleigh. Santa shouted out the reindeer's names and cracked his whip. His team charged forward and climbed into the air. Santa circled once above us, then disappeared into the cold, dark polar sky. As soon as we were back inside the Polar Express, the other children asked to see the bell. I reached into my pocket, but the only thing I felt was a hole.
Daddy.
I had lost the silver bell from Santa Claus's sleigh. Yes,
Daddy,
Luke,
why
ma'am.
his face is like that?
Because the boy was telling them the story about how he got the bell from Santa Claus's sleigh.
And this thing, why his face is like that?
Because he's sad because he lost the bell. He lost it and it was in his pocket. And there's a hole in his pocket. Let's hurry outside and look for it, one of the children said. But the train gave a sudden lurch and started moving. We were on our way home. It broke my heart to lose the bell. When the train reached my house, I sadly left the other children. I stood at my doorway and waved goodbye. The conductor said something from the moving train, but I couldn't hear him. What? I yelled out. He cupped his hands around his mouth. Merry Christmas, he shouted. The Polar Express let out a loud blast from its whistle and sped away.
Yeah.
What do you think happened?
He can open the present.
On Christmas morning, my little sister...
There's a pickup truck.
On
And there's a house.
Yeah, on Christmas morning, my little
I
sister
saw it.
Sour and I opened our presents. When it looked as if everything had been unwrapped, Sarah found one last small box behind the tree. It had my name on it. Inside was the silver bell. There was a note. Found this on the seat of my sleigh. Fix that hole in your pocket. Signed, Mr. C. I shook the bell. It made the most beautiful sound my sister and I have ever heard. But my mother said, "Oh, that's too bad." "Yes," said my father, "it's broken." When I had shaken the bell, my parents had not heard a sound. At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell. Yeah, you got the bell too. But as years passed, it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah found one Christmas that she could no longer hear its sweet sound. Though I've grown old...
You read this when I was sticking it out, and I read the whole thing too.
Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me as it does for all who truly believe. The end. The Polar Express.